Okay, so now we're going to go over this table saw safety. This is my third main step to squaring a board. So I went across the planer, did the faces, okay, and then I jointed the edge on the joiner. So now I need to cut the other edge, rip it to width, so that the two edges are parallel. So after this step's done, I should have 4 out of my 6 surfaces of my board good to go. The biggest things to remember about the table saw is there's a lot going on. The table saw is a very detailed machine. It can do lots of different functions, and I have utmost respect for the table saw. It is a very powerful tool that is essential in every shop. So if you could only have one machine in your shop, it should probably be the table saw because you can do the most with it. In home shops, the table saw can be quite dangerous, and it's a lot of times it's because people don't know some of the real basics to it. So there's a couple of things that you need to be concerned with. One is touching the blade, and we're very fortunate because with our we have the safest table saw in the world, the SawStop. So if I touch the blade, it knows, and it will stop the blade in I think it's 1/10 of a second. So very quickly, faster than a car airbag, it can stop the blade. Even though we have the SawStop, the blade guard should be on. So here's the blade guard assembly, and this is what it looks like. We have anti-kickback fingers, which are right here, and we have the riving knife, which is back here. This splitter, or riving knife, is very important because it helps to separate the board after it's been cut. Without this, it can bind on the back of the blade, and it can cause a kickback. A kickback, this saw isn't smart enough to prevent a kickback. There's nothing it can do. The kickback all falls on the operator. You do not want a kickback. So the thing to remember is we don't want to bind the board on the blade. Over here we have the rip fence. You're always going to use the rip fence for ripping. So anytime you're ripping the board, you'll use the rip fence. We don't do any freestyle cutting on the table saw. So what I mean by that is you never just take a board up here and start cutting it. That's a recipe for disaster. It's going to happen. You're going to get hurt. There's no way around it. The other thing we might need, let's say you're not cutting all the way through the board, or your board is too small. Okay, so if you're not cutting all the way through the board, or if the board is too narrow to use the guard, and that's possible, you would have to use this. This is a riving knife that goes on the back, and this helps, it's still a splitter, it helps keep the board from binding on the back part of the blade. Okay, so I'm going to put this back on. I wouldn't mind helping you do this the first time, but you just hold back the kickback fingers. It goes in here, you clamp it down, and then you shut the dust gate, and then you put this is called the throat plate. The throat plate goes back in. Our goal today is just to rip the board for squaring a board. So this is a miter gauge. This is for cross cutting. We have miter boxes that you probably use for cross cutting, but you could use this as a table saw. But for today, we're just going to do some ripping. So we will use the rip fence. I put my good edge up against the fence. So this is my good edge. It will go here. Now where you're standing is pretty important. Okay, you could stand over here on the right side of the saw. Then you're going to do most of the work with your left hand. So if you're dominantly left-handed, this is a way you can do this. You would never stand in the back. Okay, this is where kickbacks happen, and this is not a safe spot to stand. So you're going to stand this is probably where most people are going to stand on the left side of the board. You're going to actually be close to the machine. If I'm further back from the machine and I have a kickback, it's for sure going to hit me. If I'm up closer to the machine and I have a kickback, it'll probably just glance off me and it won't be near as bad. So closer is better, okay? Right here we have our big panel safety switch that I can bump with my leg to turn it off if I need to. So we'll take a closer look at this. So here's what we have in the saw in the front. We have a couple features that we need to be aware of. Here's our switch. First we have our on-off switch. We leave this on throughout the day. So you turn this on. It takes just a second for the saw to warm up, and when the green light's on, that means it's good to go. So it blinks for a second, and it might just be because it needs reset. Okay, there we go. So now the green light's on, but watch this. If I touch the blade, the red light starts blinking, it knows. So I can't touch any metal to the blade either. I wouldn't cut anything metal on the saw. I can't touch my tape measure to the blade, anything. So then this power switch will turn the blade on and off now. So if I take this, I can turn this on or off right away. The bad thing is when we do some cutting in here, the blade guard goes from clear to this dirty color very quickly, and it doesn't come off. It's just kind of burned on there. And we replace this about every year, but you just get, when you want to make your cut, you can lift this up and then you put this down. And you're not going to be able to see the blade the whole time you're cutting all the time. This right here, you loosen this knob and this raises and lowers the blade. So you'll be able to see the blade go up and down. You want the blade about 1/8 inch above the wood. So just a little bit above the wood. If you're using a softer wood, it'll be more than 1/8 inch, but for the most part, it's just 1/8 inch. And then this knob over here will tilt the blade. So I can loosen this knob and then turn the big dial. And basically what it's going to do is angle the blade for doing miter cuts, essentially long bevels, and that will kind of help us out there. So the next important thing to know is where to put your push stick at. So your push stick is essential for this. We use the bigger ones, a little safer. And if you put your push stick close to the blade, that's actually where we want it. We want it closer to the blade than the fence. And a lot of times the kids are like, I don't understand that. Why would I want my hand closer to the blade than the fence? Well, what happens, I'm going to grab a smaller piece of wood for this, is if my, this should be a 12-inch board, by the way. Every board has to be at least 12 inches or longer. If I put my, my push stick closer to the fence, you can kind of see what's going to happen. It's going to pull away from the fence. I need my push stick closer to the blade so it keeps it up against the back of the fence. So I'm going to show you this from a different view so you can kind of see this a little bit better. So here's my push stick, and I'm putting it closer to the fence, and see what happens. It pulls it away from the fence, which is bad because then it will pinch on the back part of the blade and it will throw the board at you, or it could. So my push stick actually needs to go on this side of the board, and see how it keeps it right up against the fence. That's what we want. All right, so that's where your push stick's going to go, kind of closer to the blade side than not, closer to the blade side. Okay, on the board I'm getting ready to cut is a little bit longer, and this would be a good way to get an assistant to help out with. So one of the other causes for kickback is when people stop right here. They don't finish the cut. If you stop too short, the board can come back and hit you. So you want to make the cut all the way through. Finish it off. Follow through with the cut, they call it. So I'm going to put this down. For this project, I am just going to shave a little off the board. But this will be your measurement. This is the finished product. This is what you want. This is where your finished product always goes, between the blade and the fence. You never cut your finished project off on the waist side. It's called the waist side of the blade. You would never cut your finished project piece off this side. So let's say I want a 2-inch wide board. I'm going to set this at 2 inches. From here to here, I'll measure 2 inches. And then we have a tape measure over here that sometimes is pretty accurate. But if I go the other way, you're not going to be too happy with it. So I'm going to put this back. Like I said, I'm just going to cut a little bit off. Okay, I'm all the way through, and this is where hopefully I have a friend that can grab this for me. And I'm just waiting for the blade to stop, and then I'm just going to set it down. Okay, a lot of people obsess with the scrap. This is how a lot of people get hurt on the table saw. They have to reach and grab the scrap. Don't worry about the scrap. Okay, that's something you can get after the machine comes to a complete stop. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you on a table saw is how to cross cut. We don't do this a lot in here, but here's a miter gauge. It goes in these slots. So we have one slot here, and we have one slot here. Okay, if I can use either slot, it doesn't matter, but I never use the rip fence with the miter gauge together. Miter gauge is for cross cutting, rip fence is for ripping. So if I go like this, it's going to be dangerous. It can twist and kick back at me. But if I'm like this, I'm going to be able to make a nice clean cut all the way through that. So watch me do that again. I grip the board. Okay, and I made my cut. So I'm trying to keep my hands as far away from the blade as possible, but I do need good control of the board to make my cross cut. So this is my cross cut. I prefer you just use a miter box, but there's some times where you might have to do a wider board this way or something else. You can also use a panel saw. If it's a wide board, go use a panel saw. Don't use this for that.